I'll create a new project so that at least I'll repeat the same stuff, so those who could not pay attention to it, you can still follow it. Okay, let me create a new project. So single view application. There's some name. So a basic project setup is ready. My file systems, everything being given. So straight away I go to the storyboard and see my first view controller being given. We notice that this particular view controller set to an initial view controller. This is very important. This line, if you do not find, you won't see anything when the code or when your application started running, because this tells this is the launching one, launch screen. And this settings, in fact, if you notice that once you click this particular right pane, tells, see if you this has been checked. This is called is initial view controller, some sort of checkbox. If it is unchecked, so that particular arrow will disappear. So this has to be the first one. If there is no initial view controller, program becomes a kind of a dead code. It doesn't know where to launch and where to initialize. So our first job is to, the very first time, the moment I start, because my design is a navigation controller based design, so going to editor, embed in navigation controller. If you notice this particular design, the first view controller has been wrapped inside this navigation controller. Now the navigation controller contains this arrow. Meaning the first navigation controller on the top, this particular view controller is going to be loaded. So by default, there is a navigation item is present, which I can give a title. I can go ahead and start doing it. So let us put some sort of UI components. Text field, label, a button. I'm just trying to create. Remember, my design is an adaptive design, but that's why I don't even consider myself, okay, this is an active area or something like that. But when a device is found, it has to shrink the data or shrink the view, but still maintain the same aspect ratio. So in that case, you have to plan in such a way everything start from one alignment. Say I'm just bringing this to a leftmost alignment, and maybe enter name something. Okay, let me. We'll give some sort of hard-coded value, maybe. Okay, then it just helps me to keep an alignment. Okay, that's fine. So here I am going to enter something and some name, and I'm going to take that to a second view controller. So let me bring the second view controller. Oh, okay. Fine. So this particular view controller is going to be launched when the user clicks something, or maybe when the user click on enter button, it's going to take me to the second view controller. So let's see. First thing, we have to connect them. Let me first see whether this, guys. Sometimes this choice may not appear. In that case, show. Mean when I click this particular view controller will be launched. Sometimes this selection does not work because the zooming zoom out we are continuously doing that particular time the view controller may not get highlighted. What I would recommend, see if you put a button over here, just come and from here you can, because once you select it is selecting the same button, and from here you can draft the link. So both the case it should work. So now when this particular button is clicked, this is going to call this particular segue and going to the second view controller. The second view controller does not have a navigation item. See, if I see I'm tapping it, but I couldn't put a title or something. So let me put a navigation item. See, represent a state of navigation bar including a title. In fact, I'm looking for a title. Something. So here we are going to display what I call, I will put a label, just a name I'm trying to bring. What is the name I typed over here? I'm trying to show. Okay. First thing, I haven't even set even a single constraint at this point. Let's see how it is looking like. Then we will proceed adding the constraint to keep a proper alignment. Oh, it's a very big one. I'll do one thing, I'll get my lower end one. So it consume a lot of memory. Okay, if you see this, something is not good. The button is showing somewhere and these things are not looking really good. But anyway, this transition or the navigation works because this is how I have connected. Okay, let us add some sort of constraint. What you can do, select the whole view and go here, reset to suggested constraint. So once you add it, if you see there's some sort of constraints, alignment, adjustment, some sort of kind of a point where it's going to be pushed. Not always these things would be accurate. Sometimes you may still have to do something manually in order to get a proper alignment, but 90% this thing works if your design is slightly simple enough. But anyway, we are going to talk like how to add our own constraints at one point of time, but let us see how this thing looking at this point. Much better. So I can type and click something and go here. So that is fine. Let me add, if you like to add a constraint to a specific view, you can highlight this particular view and add reset to suggested content for a selected view alone. So that also you can do. So this two category it has, one is for entire view controller, another one is for a selected view controller, I mean view alone. Whatever you prefer, you can do it. But I've just highlighted and based on this it has put a constraint. I would recommend you completely finish your design, then think about the constraining, because in free form you make sure all the design properly aligned and start from a left orientation, because that's the way the constraint will automatically will try to add required padding or margin stuff. So once you complete a design, then add the constraint. At this point I have a very small design, so no problem for this. But let's see when we create a complex design going forward. So time. First thing, the first view controller is actually the instance of this particular class which is by default being created. But the second view controller which I added here does not have a class assigned, so I'm going to create a new class. So new file, make sure it is a Coca Touch class, and say welcome view controller, whatever name. Don't select the zip file. This is an older convention, interface builder file. In a previous, when we first started iOS development, and maybe a few years after that, each view controller had their own kind of storyboard environment. Each file, it will have its own interface builder. But after main storyboard added, everything is set into a composite, and only the classes separately need to be assigned. That's the only thing. But so don't add this. If you add it, it will create one more kind of interface builder or a storyboard kind of thing. So we select and tell the path where you would like to save. So now assign this class, this one. This is very important. That's the only way I can access these objects in runtime. Otherwise, I may not be even knowing which class is responsible to access to modify this label value. So I have two view controllers, and by default this one and this one. Now time to write a Objective-C code. The very first part, in this case, I have an input field. This label doesn't make sense because it's a static key, but this particular input text, where the user is going to type something, so that I need to know the instance of this particular label, and whenever the button gets clicked, I need to read the value which is being typed on the input field or text field and take the value and go to the second view controller and modify this particular label value. So I need to have access to the UI text field and the button. So there are a couple of ways. I'm just trying to show you a manual way. I already told you, if you think about the visibility, you have to expose it in the interface file and then can be consumed in the implementation file. So first thing, it made little IB outlet, interface builder outlet. I mean, we often call that IB outlet. Mean it is there something in the interface builder. Interface builder, nothing but your storyboard instance, something what you are seeing, an interface. That button object name is UI button. It's not just a button, it is called UI button. And object name, say sub. The name of an object is having star prefix. An object will always have, because it is telling it is that particular object instance is there in this particular pointer. But we don't need to worry about how the addressing works. But the name of the object always have a star prefix. First thing, the button, UI button, is located in interface builder, and the object name is UI button, and the instance name what I am trying to create is a submit button. So this particular submit button is actually there in this storyboard, but I am not done yet. And expose it to other object or other classes. You have to define it as a property so that it can be accessed by, like in a setter getter. I'm trying to add a setter getter for this particular button so that the values or something can be accessed from outside. So that is the same thing, but tell it is non-atomic. That's a word for it's not necessary to be a thread safe. Mean a setter getter, anybody can access it. I am not worried about anyone modifying the value. Default value is atomic, which is a serialized object. Serialized objects are thread safe, but it is slow performing one. Engineering stuff you may have to worry, maybe the performance may be hitting It may not be responding quite faster if you have atomic values defined. So I'm going to tell, because I'm not worried about being a thread safe, because it's a very small application, and retain the memory as long as possible, and I'm just exposing the same thing for outside consumption, because until I define the property, this may not be exposed to outside or any other classes can access it. Of course, the access I'm going to give through the setter getter method, but I'm telling this particular object is a non-atomic one, and the memory could be retained as long as possible, and the same stuff what I just declared. Okay, still not done. This is a interface file. Let us go to the implementation file. Now add a setter getter method for that particular button. What we usually do, we'll write a method set value or get value, something we will create. But here we don't need to do that. By simply add a synthesize, we say that it will internally will add a setter getter method. That's all we have to imagine. So in an object defined, when it is synthesized, it means a setter getter method has been added. That's a assumption you have to make yourself, and this is a convention of Objective C. In fact, this is also a convention of Swift program. First thing, process start from here, declaration, telling where the button is located. It is there in the outlet, interface builder storyboard, and that the button type is a UI, that object type is a UI button, and it is the name what I am giving at this point is submit button, and I am exposing it for outside access. I am defining its property as a non-atomic retained one, mean let it be a non-thread safe or something like that, and retain the memory as long as possible, and I'm just exposing it. And in this case, in the implementation file, it has been given a setter getter method. Now it can be accessed outside. How do I know it can be accessed outside? First thing, in the view, I'm just clicking the allow button, because this is the login view controller. This is having a class called view controller. So here only I have added this particular submit button. So I'm going to UI storyboard. If I see that, right clicking on it, you see that my submit button is being listed. It is exposed. Now I'm going to tell, it is a little funny though, drag it, hey, this button is this one. It means I'm just telling it from here I brought a point and I hit that. But for example, now the object connection has been made. Mean what I'm defined in UI view, view controller, the object name submit button is nothing but what is defined in the interface builder, that particular button, and just the connection has been made. If you see that dot has been a kind of a dark dot may have been added. I'll show you one more time. I'm just going to remove the connection now. Once I remove it, now if you see that this particular dot is a kind of a, no, it's not gray, no, just a plain white dot. Mean an object is there, but it had to find the object where it is defined in the interface builder. I just create an object in this way. Now I'm going to give a relationship by telling you can highlight in this way, and then it is set. So now the object can be accessed in runtime anywhere in the view controller. For example, this is where a kind of a constructor which is being given. By default, there are a couple of methods present. If you could imagine your object-oriented property, this particular class called view controller is inheriting from something from a UI view controller. Meaning this particular class, it's inheriting something from a UI view controller. So it is inheriting something, mean there may be the parent class may contain a lot of methods. That method can be accessed by this child. So in that case, the parent method has this kind of method, seems to be. That's why it's being implemented over here. This is perfectly true for your object-oriented programming language. Any property or anything you inherit from other class, the parent class methods can be accessed by this child class method and can also be overridden. Overriding mean what? Any behavior of that particular function defined in the parent class, you can modify or you can consume or you can supplement or complement certain information to that particular function. In a plain old way, your father has given you a property like a big hotel business he left for you, and you are consuming it, and you can modify, you can attach some more business to it. Maybe you can introduce a new Chinese restaurant along with that, like that kind of imagination. So this case, the parent method seems to have containing these two methods. See, if you notice that the super keyword tells that, okay, complete whatever it is there in the parent method, finish it off, then add whatever you'd like to add further. By default, this is the method giving me a scope where I can start entering my values. For example, the view controller is now showing, that is called view did load, means the view controller being shown. I can change the submit button okay, that's also I need to tell you. Dot notation also accepted in Objective-C. That's also somehow some point of time they realized, and you know that the object name dot, the inner property can be accessed through a dot. So that you are already aware of. In most of the high level programming languages support dot notation. Mean an object instance may somehow can be accessed by putting a dot, then inner properties can be accessed. There is a title label exist. You can give a value to the title label. Remember, it is slightly C++ convention. So in this case, okay, this guy is complaining. Set title method. I took a wrong method. Okay. Okay. Dot notation is not accepted at this point. If you see that the alternative to the dot notation in Objective-C, or an object you'd like to access its inner properties or any function which is there defined in that object, can be accessed by putting a space and this particular function. For example, the submit button object UI button has a function called set value or something like that. I'm just interested on set title. So I can change the title of that particular button to some other value. But at this point I am not going to change anything because the enter is fine for me. But I can in runtime access that particular object. I too have one more object, but that object I am going to create in a different way. If you feel this is quite cumbersome, like define it and put this like UI button and blah blah blah, something like that. If you feel that is slightly difficult, there is one more way. Go to the storyboard, and if you see that there are a couple of arrows or something is present, this particular one, assistant editor, once you click, you will be given a back-to-back kind of representation. For example, this is storyboard and the particular view controller responsible for this particular view controller showing in the storyboard. I'm just going to select header file, then at this point I am trying to define, I couldn't select. Okay, if you are having a difficulty to select a particular view, what you can do, simply go here and here, that this one, login, submit button, view, still couldn't select which one. Oh, text field, round style text field, something like that. Okay, now I am going to hit the control command. I can drag it over here and it will ask me, okay, what kind of object you prefer. So like my text feed, something like that. Once I click, it will automatically add those. You may proceed this way also. But this, of course, things will come through a practice. You may get used to it. But if you feel this kind of a connecting and putting a link is something you really don't like, you can manually type them and go ahead. So select that particular thing. If you could not select through the storyboard, I would recommend you simply hit this bar and select this particular thing, and from there you can draft it and connect it. And this one by default would connect everything. And if you really need a setter getter access, yes, you can define its property, whatever required. Okay. And I'm still not done yet. Let me go back. Okay, I'm going to assume everything requires setter getter, but at this point I'm not sure though, but I'm going to keep them maybe for future use. Comma, you can put like, my text. If at all required, we will see. We have defined those objects, but we yet to detect whether this in this case there is a button exists. How do I detect the button is pressed? In Java, what we call event listeners. So how do I add a kind of event listener? Oh, not Java, JavaScript. How do I add an event listener for this particular button? So that start from another convention. Functions start with a minus and plus keyword. I'll let you know what is minus and plus signifies. Maybe static, non-static stuff. Like a static function or static object. Typically, a single instance one, anyone can access and modify it, and maybe it is considered as a not safe, potentially less secure, because that object is maintaining a single memory instance. Whereas the instance based one, we are safe, but even though that is open to a thread safe environment, a threaded environment, but it can be maintaining its own memory. So the minus tell that I am trying to define a kind of a non-static method, and that method is going to return an action. Selector mean the function name, say submit button press. This is the abstract method at this point. Abstract method in the sense it doesn't have an active working body. I'll come back to the method syntax. Just before, let me implement that method so that an abstract method will have an active body. If you could imagine in a high level programming language, the interface, if you try to create interface, it's a place where abstract methods or abstract objects going to be resided. If a method is there in the interface, typically it is not an active method. Always an abstract method finds a place, and that's true at this point because this is an abstract one, and this is the respective implementation file. In Objective C or C++ environment, every class has the interface and implementation file together. So it's not like a high level language. A class by default has certain thing implemented already. But in low level or mid level programming language, each class has its own interface and its implementation file. So if you are defining any method which you would like to expose it to outside, make sure you define it here, make it an abstract method and implement it in the implementation file. Okay, we have a couple of methods already here. If you look that void, okay, it seems to be a return type. So when the function execute, you're trying to return some value, that's what it is trying to tell. So similarly, it is some sort of event it is going to give me, and this is in our understanding a function name, mean the equivalent to a JavaScript function. This is somehow I'm trying to correlate it. I mean, it's, you may imagine this is the exact representation of the same in Objective C. There is no function keyword, the name of the function, and the instance or parameter whatever it is going to take. Then you may wonder, what is this one, what exactly, and what is this one, a kind of a colon is separating each other. Yes, we will come back to that, but before that, in fact, it is not a function name at all, it is a function argument according to the Objective C. I'll write one more function. Say I'm just trying to create a user defined function. String here we are calling ns string. Okay, we don't have a string primitive type. This is ns string. What is ns? You may find a lot of ns prefix added in Objective C because the Objective C was actually conceived by a company called Next Step. So they actually created this particular object oriented capable C++. So you may find a lot of objects having a ns prefix. The next step has a big story behind. One point of time, the Steve Jobs, the Apple CEO then time, and still he was fired by his own company. So due to some reason, internal politics, his own company fired him. So he got irritated. He started his own company called Next Step. Eventually, Next Step became successful. Apple failed one point of time, and these Apple somehow rushed and again brought the guy. Okay, you come back and join Apple. Then he merged the Next Step with Apple. This story came in between. He invented, or his company invented Objective C and all the stuff. So that been taken over by Apple, but still the object names still remain ns string, ns log, ns integer, ns number. There are a lot of stuff there. We'll come back to that story a little while later. This is a typical function. I'm going to implement it. See that this function return type I've defined to start with, and I'm asking what is the start text, what is the end text. The instance of the value is start and end, which is going to be a parameters of your function. But this requires two parameters, each has its own label. Unlike the conventional program, parameter does not comes with a function name and whatever parameter we just put it. But in this case, each argument has its own label. How I can consume this particular function? Self mean instance class. This equivalent to high level language, you may have seen this instance of the same class. In this case, it is self. Okay, space. That's what I said. Space means the inner object can be accessed. Start, because by default we have made it as a instance based method, so you can access only through the instance. If you see that start text, what is the start text? What is the end text? And this is the way you can consume that particular object. Now, a function expects two arguments, and each argument has its own label. So in my case, I cannot guarantee that this is the name of the function. In fact, it is not. The equivalent to the same in object or in maybe in JavaScript, I could write some this is the maximum I can think of. See the entire contrast of the different syntax here itself. A function requires two arguments. In fact, each argument has its own label. I mean, the label is nothing but the start text and end text. And this start text is expecting a string, and that I am telling the name of the particular object start, and the second object also expect an argument type is string, and it is also expecting I mean it's a name of an object. So at this point, that's the whole purpose. I said do not correlate with your language which you already know. This guy has his own syntax. A function in fact is defined as, in this case, instead of parameter, I have a convention called message. We should not say a parameter. We are trying to send a message. An object is receiving a message. So in this case, the object receiving a start text as this one, receiving the message, and end text is receiving this particular message. So this is the syntax of a function in Objective-C. So not to get confused with the conventional programming language. Maybe see this merge function makes sense because in other high level programming language, the function does not carry two different labels. The function name is singleton, the arguments could be anything, how many numbers possible. But in this case, each object receives the exclusive message, and I cannot say this is a function name at all. So a typical function with the two argument will be looking like this. So make yourself comfortable. That's the reason I am trying to give you a lot of break. You have to type a lot. I'll be writing this convention quite often, but I'll still give you a lot of time. But this kind of complex function is not going to come in this example though. Just I gave an introduction. We will again come back at any point of time. And in like what we had in JavaScript, we had a console.log. But I'll find out because it's not taking it. I'll do something. Just need to see how to increase the screen size. I'll do it. Okay. Like in JavaScript, we had a console.log to check the console output. We have the same here, which is called nslog. Equivalent to a console, I can see the debug output. So here we call that as a nslog. Okay, nslog, you can, so for example, you'd like to display what is entered in the start. So whenever that particular function, yeah, again. Okay, I hope if you remember, in C, to output a string, we have to first define the placeholders and map the values. For example, start text is, and this is the placeholder, the first value will be mapped, and end text is percentage at, I think numbers are D, percentage D, and couple of convention we have in C++, the same stuff we are going to use here, and okay. So the placeholders, the first placeholder for a string will be percentage at the rate, and the start will be mapped, and the second one will be end will be mapped here. So you will end up seeing a log. What is the start text and end text? So we will see that. I'm just calling in view did load, so hopefully I should see it as soon as I see the view in. Okay, here. So that start text is possible and end text is something. So this automatically appears over here. This is where you are going to debug a lot. But this is not actual debugging. In fact, debugging possible through the breakpoints. But that's I'm going to cover maybe through on the testing side, because the scope right now on the development side. but you can also put a breakpoint to identify the object value. Plus, in this case, nslog also helps you to identify. So in Objective-C, the function or function convention is a little different. An object receives a message instead of a function receiving a parameter. So in this case, everything is message. So a function name expects a label for the corresponding messages. If you have a function having 3 arguments, you should have 3 labels and the respective type of an object and called one by one. That's the Objective-C equivalent function type. Okay. We have a lot of examples though following, but anyway, so this is what we have done. But anyway, this is a default one, because certain object type might not expect a star, because these are all the global primitive, not primitive type, global type, that won't require the pointer denotion. That's the reason the ID did not have the kind of a star or whatever it is prefixed. Okay, whenever this particular button is clicked, say string should start with the @ prefix. Remember, @ and within quotation. So button pressed. But if you see this particular dot, it is still white, like it seems to be it's not connected. Because if you notice here, everything is having a kind of a dark, like the button is little dark, saying that it is connected with the interface builder. But if you see this particular function, it's looking like it's not connected. IB action or anything having IB prefix, that particular object should be searched in the storyboard or interface builder. This is the user defined function, nothing to do with the interface builder. That's why there is no mention about IB or anything at all. So let me connect it. Okay. Again, we have a couple of ways to connect. Right clicking on the button, you see number of properties. A button can be pressed, entered. There are a lot of things possible. I'm just going to say touchdown. Whenever button is pressed, it's called touchdown. Select it and go to your view. It will give you choice. Hey, this may be for this particular function. Select it. Now connected. Now if you see this one, you see the dark thing added. So the button now will receive a callback whenever a press or touchdown event is happening. Let us see that. Already Segue is there, which is taking the particular user to another view controller. But anyway, when I click this enter button, if you see this particular log is printing, button is pressed. So I wrote a function or event handler. Whenever the button gets pressed, it will take, or it will, the event can be handled. Maybe I can validate, I can do something else. So a lot of stuff I can do, proceed with that. But our task not yet complete. I would like to take the value, whatever being typed. For example, here, when I type and when I click enter, I want to see the same value whatever I entered in the text field. I want to bring it here. So how I can bring it? So that's the task I am trying to explain. Even though button click we somehow identified, but that doesn't serve a purpose, because the view controller immediately progressed, and it is not something a manual dependent or one. You can even manually call, but in this case is automated. Okay. In jQuery mobile, we had a page before change, some sort of event which will identify just before the page change happened. It helps me to transport some data. Same one we have here as well. It is called, let me, prepare for Segue. It's a function, is there globally. Maybe the parent class has it, that's why I can easily implement it. This prepare for Segue is going to do the similar job what our jQuery mobile did. Whenever the page is visible, it identifies who is loading, what has happened. It tells which view controller is going to be shown whenever something happens from this particular view controller. Means when I click enter, the existing view controller goes back and another view controller comes on. But still the previous view controller is running, mean it just went behind but still keeping the memory. So this guy knows what exactly happening. I'll let you how I'm identifying it. Before that, let me go to storyboard. So this is the segue responsible to transfer or maybe modify the stack. For example, from this view controller to this view controller is possible using this particular segue. Each segue can have a unique identifier or ID. So I'm going to give an ID. Say I'm just going to make next page segue, whatever. It is recommended to keep an ID for any segue whatever you create, because we will see the purpose here. I can identify, if you see this particular function, it expects two message and each has the label. One is prepare for segue and another one is a sender. Just now I wrote a similar function. It is some function with the two argument in your other programming language comparison, but it is expecting or it is giving me two arguments. So I'm going to put a ns log to check segue identifier. The square bracket or dot notation, most of the time both the thing will work. Mean is an object, the property of an object, something you are trying to access. The square bracket tells okay it is complete. Okay, if you do not keep it, it won't be able to identify whether the block is completed, whether you finish accessing those objects. Or the equivalent one can also be called this way. The dot notation is also accepted. Dot notation was added little later point of time. Objective-C did not contain a dot notation to start with. Few years, maybe 3 or 4 years only, we are seeing this dot notation. I am pretty convinced with my older style, because I usually developed from quite long back. I usually confined with the older style. So anything is possible. So you can even use a dot notation, or in this way also you can access it. So whenever page transition or whenever the new view controller being shown, this particular block will be automatically called. Let's see that. Anyway, that's no use. When I click enter, you see that spelling mistake. Okay, fine. Segue identifier is, what is the segue it has called? It is called next page segue. Means it has called this particular segue. Mean from here to this particular case. Mean this is the source view controller, this is a destination view controller. This segue knows from where he is going. Mean the segue knows who is source view controller, who is destination view controller. It has its own instance, because it is making a transport between them. It is actually knowing the starting and end point from where it is going. So I am trying to identify what is this destination view controller. If I identify that, and I can access those inner objects. Okay. Before that, let me complete this part also. It is called UI label. And I am also going to need one more string. I've defined two objects, one being outlet one because which is there in the interface builder, another one a user defined one which I am going to use it maybe for other purpose. Make a give a setter getter property. Sorry. Make it as a non-atomic retain. Same stuff. And synthesize them. Synthesizing should happen after the implementation because setter getter is the implementation block. So whatever my label and both has been synthesized, setter getter added. You may wonder why I added this particular string, because I'm trying to modify the label value. So the label is working only after view is visible, but the segue is called just before the view is visible, because this particular line, it is actually defined in this view controller. It is receiving some sort of callback, but once the callback is received, that particular view controller goes behind the screen and a new view controller comes up. So the label will be visible only after this particular page is shown. So I may not be able to access the label. Instead, I can access any string or any kind of an object. So what I'm going to do, my label, setting the text to so set title or text. One second. Looks like text only. The equivalent to this one both are same. This is through a dot notation. I am setting the value. This is through the square bracket, same equivalent to that. Whatever way you feel comfortable, you can use it. See the message it is being receiving, and in this case the message being received in this way. So the dot notation, if you are using, you have to follow this convention, or if you are using this particular convention, you have to use the square bracket way. Whatever you feel comfortable, you may use it. Most of the people will prefer dot notation because that's what you are already aware of it. But little practice will help you to get more idea about it. Maybe in afternoon I'll give you a detailed explanation of how an object value can be sent. In fact, I just explained, but how it could be still sent using a dot notation or maybe through this kind of square bracket way. This is called object receiving a message. We often say in that way. It is not object setting the value. We tell object receiving a message. Mean you are setting a value. We often in Objective-C convention, the object is receiving a message. So this is what the my label is a class. It has a one of an object called set text. It is receiving a message called label string. Okay, I've set everything. Now go back here. If maybe more than one segue is calling, okay, in that case import, because this view controller is going to access some value of the other view controller. So welcome. So I just import the header. When I import the header, I am aware of, okay, what are all the public defined or any kind of methods or object defined in this object can be accessed. So import doesn't mean it's something it's merging. It only reads the header information so that it is aware of what is globally declared methods or objects are there. So I can build now the instance of I hope your previous sessions, the class name should always start with the uppercase, camel case. In that sort of convention, you may be already aware of it. Same stuff I'm doing here. And cast it, seeing that. Segue Destination View Control. The destination view, okay, I think a dot notation. Okay, the segue knows about the destination. So the destination, there is going to be definitely a view controller, but I don't know what kind of view controller it is. I'm just helping him. The destination view controller is nothing but the welcome view controller. So it means it gives me a view controller instance. I'm just guiding the destination is nothing but the welcome view controller. Thus, I have an instance of the welcome view controller. Now I can access the values of this particular welcome view controller. Sorry, lower, smaller. And its label. Instead of label, I've just what is that? The name I gave for that string, label string. I can get the value of my text field, text. Whatever been typed on the text field will be mapped to, or this particular object will receive the message of the value whatever been typed on this particular text field, and once it is receiving, and you will end up seeing this particular I think it's okay, I am not done yet. The object mapping is not completed yet. Let us connect them. This has to be completed. Then only this particular object will receive a message, otherwise it cannot receive the message. Now we have a message received to it. So whatever I type, I can send it. Little roundabout way, but if you could relate your jQuery mobile, you can easily pick up what I am trying to do. The page transition happens by segue. So the segue knows who is the source and destination. So I'm just trying to get access to that particular segue, and I'm querying the segue who is your destination. The destination in this case, welcome view controller. The welcome view controller has two objects which is having global scope. One is the label, another one is the string. And these two have a global spec. Since I import the header of this particular view controller, I am aware of what all the global objects are present in that welcome view controller. So whenever the particular segue is called, I am querying the segue who is the destination view controller, get the instance of the second view controller, and access the inner object and assign the values or send the message to the object. And thus, whenever this particular view controller is presented, it will receive the label string value. Once the view is visible, it will map the value to the label. I couldn't directly tell the label value because of the reason the label may not be ready, because this particular line is called just before the view controller is visible. So I had to use a placeholder string and send the value to the string and retain. Of course, we have given the retain information, so the value will be there. And once the value when the view is fully visible, when the label is visible, that value is being mapped to the label, or for example view controller, whatever label we are showing. So this is slightly a roundabout way. Afternoon you have time. Afternoon I have one more session. Once you complete it, that particular session is going to talk about, this is the forward segue. What about the reverse segue? Mean here I have some form, I enter something, I want to bring it back. So we did the data transport in the forward direction. Can we do the same in the reverse direction? So that part I am going to talk in the afternoon session. Before that, you have to get used to this one. And certain convention, I really understand it's going to take you a time, but if you spend a time on that, you will surely get it. It's pretty easy, in fact. Only certain convention is different. I'll until you get used to it, I'm going to revolve around this only, because if you do not understand, the rest of the part is going to be little tricky. But if you understand what I did in the jQuery mobile, I'm going to do the same here. So that will be quite interesting. Only thing, we are going to use a different programming language to achieve the same task. So architecture point you understand, but syntax you should get used to it. So afternoon session we will discuss about that. Not like previous days, you will have a time to chit chat or do something hereafter. Yesterday I was noticing you guys, but still I know that okay, you guys let's relax, but things are not going to be the same going forward. So understand, try to practice and see, and if you have any question, let me know. I'll find a way to maximize this one. I tried to in the preference did not work, but anyway I'll try it so that I'll increase the font size and explain properly. What are the convention I did today? Object declaration and giving the setter getter synthesize the object, and function what you call syntax. We say we define the function with their object parameters, or in this case we should not even say it as a parameter, messages. So an object is always receiving a message. In a higher level programming, object receive a kind of a value or parameter, we often say that. But here object receive a message. An object can receive a message using a dot notation or as well as a square box, object name, space, and what is the message it is expecting. So that you can give, or put a dot also you can do. What is best you feel, you do it. And Swift is entirely a dot notation based language. This guy is still older and has both the thing attached. And in my understanding, that's the reason Apple had to add one more programming language, because this syntax is a little different. But it's once you understand, it's quite enjoyable still. Okay, we'll see in the afternoon session. As if you want videos, I'll give it in a